Here's my star sizer that I hooked up to the parts that I'll put a little link on the description of this YouTube. Gentleman named Dan sells these parts to hook up to a piston with an air compressor. You basically got a system to automate your star sizer. Not a bad system. I took all the parts he recommended, the parts you can buy on Granger, and I just put them inside this Plano ammo can. It just makes it a lot easier to keep them separate, or keep them together rather. I just got the lines coming out of the back. I cut a wire off of extension cord that I wasn't using. In any case, here's the system. Just turn it on, and you see it starts to size. A couple of issues I have with it. You can see a little bolt coming out the end. I'll tell you what that's all about in just a second. You really got to make sure that the system's set up perfectly to feed these. If there's any little jam or something, something will bend. In the case of the weakest link in this system, it's the actual lever arm that Dan sells, which is lucky, because that's probably what you want to break. You don't want any of these other parts. The piston, which was probably the most expensive part outside of the whole star sizer itself. I did find a cheap alternative to just asking Dan for a new one of these every time. These are, sorry about the compressor in the background, but as you can see, a little bit of air goes through, and I have a small compressor, so it's going to kick on every once in a while. You can see what I'm using instead of the part that bent from Dan. I'm using a little concrete anchor. It's a 6-inch 3/8 coarse concrete anchor you can buy in a bolt store. I bought a little bag of them, buck something a piece. Not too bad. So that's one issue you'll probably come across if you put the system together. Those will bend. Not a huge problem, as long as nothing else breaks on it. I'm running 40 right now, and you can see I've sized quite a few of them already. These are only taking off 2 or 3 thousandths, so it's not too bad sizing these. If you're doing something any bigger than that, I expect that lever arm to start to bend. So Dan recommends only sizing about 2 thousandths, and that's what basically I'm doing right now. Now the big problem I've had with this is right now you can see the piston's locked, because this line right here has air going through it. The system defaults to either line with air in it when you shut it off, and the problem I see with that is, and I know there's a way of changing that if you add some other parts or do something different. The real problem with that is it in my case, it's locking up right now. You could have it feeding the rear one, and then it would be locked forward, which probably is the least best alternative. Right now it's sizing well with the 40, but the one thing you can have a problem with is if you do flip it off in a position where if you left it like this and then you flip it back on, it actually in some cases it doesn't see, like it didn't push that bullet as far down as it needs to, so the next bullet that's fed is going to get locked up in that slider. So that initial start of the system is a problem. You got to watch for that. One thing I like to do is I like to use gas checks on some of my bullets, and some bullets just aren't going to feed through this this bullet feeder. So what I bought was this here, and if you want, you can skip this whole thing right here. Skip a lot of these Granger parts, the solenoid, etc., and just buy this cheap $30 $50. I think I paid about 40 or 50, but there's cheap ones on Amazon, and I'll put a link to this one in my video. But basically what this allows, it's a joystick. It just goes up and down, and you can actually go slow, or you can basically just inch up. So in the case of this one, when the system's off, it's going to be either up or down. That's it. This one lets you go up and down, you know, slowly, and stop midway, do whatever you want. And in this, it's just you know, your inlet valve for the airflow, and then these just feed the, these lines here right to the piston. So you will need to buy the piston. That's again one of the most expensive parts, but there's a lot of other parts in this box, solenoid, etc., that are not cheap. I am using a little lube. I know some people don't like to, but it does go a little smoother. So I went ahead and did that. So again, if you're just going to be sizing a lot, now I'm doing this just because my shoulder's not the greatest, so I want to save my shoulder as long as I can, so I don't want to be sizing thousands of bullets by hand. Anyways, that's the video. And again, a 6-inch anchor bolt, bent anchor or something like that, concrete anchors, 3/8 thread, get you there. So this right here, I will replace this with a shorter bolt. The one that comes with the system isn't long enough to tap in and hold on to the thinner diameter anchor bolt compared to what Dan will sell you. Anyways, Dan's got a good idea here. I know other people have had ideas like this. His is pretty good, and the parts were relatively inexpensive. And he did actually send me a second bolt or lever arm, but guess what? I bent that one too. So I didn't bend it on 40's sizing pretty well. Again, I was sizing some other stuff, a little bigger diameter, and I had some more feeder issues than I would have liked. So again, I would start with this first, personally. I like it, unless you're really confident in your sizing, or rather feeding mechanism for the bullet you're using. But if you're using some bullet that isn't going to feed well, then that's a problem. One other thing I should add is with the 40, I had to purchase the actual 40 slider. The problem with the 45 that Magma will tell you will work with this is, with this system, you can see it just goes slow up or back and forth really slow, and that just doesn't give the momentum to the bullet to get it into the hole. And you need that momentum when you're sizing by hand. You're giving it a little momentum, so it's not happening when you're using a system like this. So you need to buy the actual 40. They'll sell it to you. It's not that expensive, so I went ahead and bought it, and they even sent the tube for it and everything. So anyways, good system. I do like the little finger shield. Good job, Dan. Thanks a lot. Bye.